Welcome to a special edition of Dispatch Radio. This is the last of our four-part series recapping our live Rare Air Talks event at the Studio Boulder on May 17th, sponsored by the Colorado Outdoor Recreation Industry Office. In this episode, you will hear from Elyse Rylander, the founder of Out There Adventures, and Sonya Pevzner, a journalist with a personal connection to the issue of diversity in the outdoors.
Backcountry Colorado, hiking, backpacking.
I did a lot of marathons. I was convinced to do some ultras.
Climbing, and I do filming and photography.
I just like the ultras because I love the community. I just think that everybody is so nice, whether they're the first place finishers or, you know, us that kind of mosey along.
Thanks, Russ. So my name is Elyse Rylander. I use she, her pronouns. I did come in from another fantastic outdoor town in Washington. I live up in Bellingham. Been up there for the last couple of years. And I'm going to give you all, some of you all might be familiar with the work that I do, but I'm assuming not many of you are. So I'm going to give you a bit of a backstory into why I'm here and why I'm doing the work that I'm doing. So I got my start in the industry in 2006 and have been working in a number of capacities since then. I was a paddle guide. I worked up in Alaska. I've done some challenge course facilitation work at a climbing gym and whatnot. And the entire time that I was engaging in those experiences, much like Christy's experience with wanting to go out and have these experiences with folks, but not seeing yourself reflected in the other people that you were participating with, I was having a hard time finding my identity as a queer woman be reflected in the work that I was doing. I did have access to a couple of fantastic mentors at the kayak shop that I got my start at, Rutabaga Paddle Sports back in Madison, which was amazing. And so it allowed me to interact with these women who were openly gay and doing these really badass things like whitewater canoeing and all sorts of stuff, right? But that experience was pretty limited. And so as I was continuing through my journey in the outdoor industry, I wanted to create a space for folks, particularly for youth, because that is where my background primarily lies in youth education, for them to be able to see themselves reflected in not only the adults, but also their peers. So in about 2011, actually with the help, Brian wasn't around at the time, but with the help of Big City Mountaineers, I put together the framework for an organization that would be focused on taking LGBTQ teens outside on expeditions and day trips. Fast forward about, what are we in 2018? So about 7 years or so now, we're in our fourth programmatic season. We operate in Seattle and San Francisco. We're looking to bring programming here to Denver, Minneapolis, DC, and Atlanta in the next year. And our emphasis has been on youth, but we also engage adults now in programs. So we took about 30 queer adults out snowshoeing on a section of the PCT in Washington in January. Pretty sure that was the highest concentration of LGBTQ folks that had ever been on that section of the PCT. We did a ski weekend, and then I also put on an annual conference. And it's been fantastic to see the reception of our work in the last number of years, and how much the conversation has evolved around LGBTQ equity, right? Even using pronouns in introductions. That's something that didn't happen 5 years ago, believe it or not. Right? So we're making these small incremental changes. But we have a long way to go. And I think something that is unique for the LGBTQ community compared to communities of color, for women, and some of these other, I'm going to crash into things too, just like Russ, some of these other communities that we are working to uplift, LGBTQ identities can remain invisible for certain folks, right? So when we look back at our history of queer folks who have been summiting mountains and doing all these things, it's really hard to find those stories, right? For folks that have been crushing it, for lack of a better term, out there in the natural world. And so it is important for us to continue to uplift those who have been doing that work for a long time and to make sure that we are recognizing the shoulders that we stand on. And so I am super excited that Jamie is here to talk about her experiences, and it was great to be able to get to know her earlier today in the hot, stuffy Airstream. And I'm excited for you all to be able to hear her story, because she's been living and working in this industry for a long time. And it's important to recognize where we have come so that we can be better informed on where we are going, right? And to make sure that we are paying homage to those folks that have come before us, because without folks like Jamie, I wouldn't be able to be here today in front of you all. Hey, y'all.
I can't follow Elyse's eloquence, but hi, it's really nice to meet everyone on stage. Just to clarify, I was not giving birth to my own child. I know there might be some confusion about that. I was actually, and this is relevant to why we're all talking about this today, right? So you can't necessarily tell by looking at me that I'm a refugee, but I am. And English was not my first language, and I didn't speak English until I was about 3 or 4. And we're actually Jewish refugees from the Soviet Union. So that's a weird and interesting thing to be a refugee who is a white person. Speaking of invisible identities, you can't tell by looking at me that I'm both queer and a refugee, right? So I got involved with volunteering with teaching refugees English about 2 months ago, and I got assigned to this woman who is at the time 7 months pregnant. She just delivered her daughter about 3 or 4 hours ago. So huge congratulations to Jose. And speaking of names that are unpronounceable, she was going to name her daughter Kausar, Kausar, which is a beautiful, beautiful name. The baby was born beautiful and fat and healthy, and come find me after if you want to see photos. She's amazing. And as the doctor was saying, so what's the baby's name? And, to go write it up on the whiteboard. And I was like, oh yeah, it's Kausar. And she's like, Kausar? What's that? And as she went to write it, my friend Jose immediately was like, actually, it's Azra, A-S-R-A, which is way easier for white people to pronounce. So speaking of diversity issues that affect all of us every day, relevant to the outdoors, but also relevant just to everyday life. So a bit of a tangent, but that's where I was today. I'm here now. The baby's healthy. Everybody's happy. That's what's up. I wrote things down because I can't just speak off the cuff. So I have just some words that I wanted to share about diversity in the outdoors, just a little bit about me. My name is Sonya. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Boulder, Colorado. I've been here about 1.5 years. I work largely within diversity in the outdoors industry. That means writing, editing. I edit travel articles and edit in things about Indigenous history when and where I can. So you do what you can where you can. I also edit some films and do some photography. If you want to hire me, you can find me after. But yeah, so here's just some thoughts about diversity in the outdoor industry. So you can't tell by looking at me that English wasn't my first language or that I'm queer. I can't go back to the country I'm from because it's not safe for me or my partners there. I never felt like a refugee until I realized that it was not safe for me to go home. Here's what I want to advocate for. Ask people. Ask people what their pronouns are, but don't ask them to explain what it's like to be inside their head. Educate yourself. Google things that you don't understand. Own up to mistakes you make, and understand that your actions can have direct consequences on their lives. Our ignorance is not an excuse for the consequences of our actions. Ask yourself, do you know what trans is? Do you know the difference between a refugee and an immigrant? Do you know the name of the native people whose land you are on today? How many Black people are you friends with on Facebook? How many have you invited into your house? These things matter, not because it is a quota to fill, but because these things matter because people's lived experiences affect the way they interact with the world, and it's important to have diversity in the perspectives that you experience in this world. Which brings me to my next fun fact. For us, this is cat tip to you. In my past life, I was a wildlife biologist. See, I tied it in. I didn't know anything about climbing on public lands, but I learned about the richness of landscapes and the way they all work together to create this world, despite their vast differences. I learned that diversity in nature is important because an ecosystem and a population that has strength in genetic and phenotypic diversity is stronger. I fail to understand how anyone can try to tell me that this is not also true for the people and communities that we live in.
A quick note from our nonprofit partners for the evening, Big City Mountaineers. They have 1 slot remaining for their Summit for Someone trip to the Grand Teton in Jackson Hole, July 16th through 19th, with Jackson Hole Mountain Guides. Help raise money for a great cause and have an experience of a lifetime. Contact Brian Martin at Brian, B-R-Y-A-N, at bigcitymountaineers.org. And lastly, if you are in the Colorado area and have an interest in the topic of runner's high or relevant experience, we would love to hear from you. Write to us at info@dispatchradio.com for a special offer to take part in a mini citizen science research project.